So still on the topic of food, I think personally that food is one of the parts about culture that bring a lot of people together. And being from Haiti, Patrick, we love our pork, we love our rice and beans, we love our plantains. It's very similar to the Hispanic culture, by the way. Even though I think ours is a little bit better, but that's besides the. No. I'm just talking about the plantains. So, Christina, talk to us a little bit about in your culture, growing up in Nebraska, obviously, and then going to Japan very often and seeing the difference maybe in the food. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Like you said, like I grew up in an American town, but like the household was very Asian and had a Japanese culture to it. So it's funny because like when I would go out to my friend's house, like it was always fast food. Like let's order Subway or Burger King, kind of like what we talked about.
Yeah,
it's
that's
always,
true.
That's what the family always cooked. But then at my house, like presentation and etiquette and preparation is very important in the Japanese culture. So just taking the time to make everything look neat, like the aesthetics is very important in Japanese culture. So yeah, that's the biggest difference.
Speaking of that, I heard that slurping in the Japanese culture is actually a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah?
That was yes.
Yeah.
So if you slurp my grandma's noodles, like she'll be very happy. Yeah. that was definitely a big thing, and it's kind of fun. Because everyone thinks, like in America, if you eat loud or chew loud, it's very disrespectful.
Yeah.
But in the Japanese culture, if you slurp noodles, it's actually a compliment to the chef.
And that's interesting because you did say like in American culture you can't really chew loud or make any noises when you eat, and especially with noodles. And for me, when I was a kid, you could eat noodles or spaghetti like that, and then you slurp it up and then make a mess. And it's always like you can't do that at the table. But I read that in Japan it's actually a good thing. And also I think in Arabic culture they burp after every meal. Is that correct in Arabic? I want to make sure that I get it right.
I'm not sure. I can't confirm exactly. It depends what sect of Arabic culture. But yeah, that might be
I've heard about it. I've seen it a
right.
couple times. I just want to make sure I'm attaching it to the right culture. But
Right.
burping is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
You'll cut it out if it's wrong. Don't worry.
Say it again. So in terms of food, Luigi, we spoke a little bit about obviously the pasta and the stigmas about the Italian culture, but how about one thing that I realized is you guys have like 6 different phases in your eating process, where you have like pasti,
What day of the
antipasti,
week
or
are
whatever.
you talking about?
Say it again. Say it again.
What day of the week are you talking
Yeah,
about?
so you guys take your time when you eat, right? Because if you're gonna
Yes.
have 6 different meals or parts of
Well,
the
we
meal.
don't have 6 meals, but I think Italians are still the only population in the world who will talk about food while eating.
So they talk about the
We're
food they're eating.
so passionate about it that even while we're eating, we will talk about different kinds of food, even with the ones we're not eating. We'll talk about the restaurant, being at a restaurant. We'll talk about another restaurant. We'll talk about your grandma who used to do that lasagna like nobody else. So it is a culture, but you have to keep in mind, Italian food, unlike French food or other cultures that respect food in a very high level fashion, Italian food really comes out of the Italian regions, and it's fundamentally family food from an agricultural background. And that's why every region of Italy has very distinct kinds of food. You will find mostly butter in the north, you will find mostly olive oil in the south as a main condiment, but in general it is very well respected by everybody. In Italy, the worst offense you can do to anyone is throw food away. So, and it's also very traditional when you visit someone, you bring food, and that food is always appreciated. Maybe not really, but it's very disrespectful not to.
Can imagine.
And you grew up with that, but because Italian cuisine is fundamentally a simple cuisine, our biggest issue when we travel around the world is, first of all, we're very affectionate to our own cuisine. And because it's a very simple form, if you think about it, if you think of pasta, if you think of pizza, if you think of any forms of breads. We have a lot of varieties of bread in Italy. If you think of risotto, if you think of lasagna, if you think of anything that's traditionally attached to Italian food, it's all very simple plates, many of which are even street food. If you think of pizza, pizza is really street food. But because of its simplicity, it has to be done in the right way with the right ingredient. But he was talking about rice and beans, for example, in the Latin American culture and the Caribbean culture in general. But there's an art to the rice and bean, just like there's an art to the pizza. Many people don't appreciate that, and that's their loss. You have to be able to appreciate what's behind something, and it's your treasure if you appreciate what a good pizza is and why it is good, rather than a bad, cheap, poorly made pizza and why that is bad. And it's bad not only for taste, it's bad for your health, it's bad for many other things.
Are you talking about American pizza?
Because, well,
I'm just kidding.
talking about,
He's
maybe
fast
talking about
stuff.
Scandinavian pizza. But the truth is, it's all about the ingredient.
Yeah.
And a chef can appreciate that. If things are done properly, with the right ingredients, with fresh ingredients, with top of the line olive oil, if the olive oil is rancid, your food is rancid. There's nothing you can do about that.
That's at the base. It's important.
And unfortunately, if your taste is destroyed by the fact that all of your life you ate rancid olive oil, that you're accustomed to that. But for someone who's not accustomed to that, it becomes difficult to be in a place where you don't eat that kind of food made in that kind of way. That's why Italians are become the chefs of the world, because wherever we go, we need to go to someone who cooks like us.
I thought it was the French that were the cooks of the world.
Oh.
It is true. You have to give the French what the French are due. The high cuisine, which is a French invention, is definitely where they rule, unchallenged.
Yeah.
But that's why I was saying it's a different form of cuisine. The high cuisine was really formed in the cuisine of the kings and the noblemen of France. Italian cuisine is completely different, just like the Caribbean cuisine comes from the bottom, not from the top.
That's true. Oh, wow, that's interesting.
So it's the people who manage to, in a way, impose their cultural traditions to the rest of the world. If you think about it.
Patrick, did you learn about that in culinary school? Like what he's talking about how like the food originated from the cuisines?
In school, my opinion, I think they made it seem like everything came from France.
Le cordon bleu, le cordon bleu.
That's actually where I went. But David saw was like, no. They make it seem like everything was from France, and French invented everything. Then I had this little kid, French was the first one to put it in the book. But I really cook it, for example, like you said, the French cuisine really comes from the top and translates to the bottom, and so many other culture comes from the bottom and goes up. But nowadays we're seeing whatever was coming from the bottom is really coming at the top. Right. Where it was for the poor to eat chicken feet. Now you go to find 5-star chicken feet on the plate.
Yeah. Now it's fine dining.
Now it's fine dining. So wherever you're from, if it's good to you, if your food is good, then it will be good for most. Don't be like, maybe. So what you can do, maybe you can take your culture, what you owe, and that's what I try to do on a day-to-day basis. Take my food and put it in the fine dining place where it could be more appeal in our eyes, because I always say we eat with our eyes first.
Right.
If it looks good, we'll taste it. If it doesn't look good, I don't know about
that.
That's
for it.
It might be better than the one that looks good. Actually.
Yeah, you're right.
You're right. But
but
that's what food is. That's what hamburgers, hot dogs, where it really comes from. When we hear about New England clam chowder, where it really comes from. When we hear about Cajun in America, soul food, where it really comes from. So I have to say that when we talk about coming from the bottom, as African slaves, they did a really good job with creating that flavor. Because they didn't have the filet mignon. They had the rough cut of meat.
Facts.
So the way food has expanded the way food is today, it really comes from generation, I would say.
Right.
So we should all taste everything.
Facts.
Yeah.
So I knew that food would be one of our favorite topics here because we all actually have to have it on a daily basis. So, Yubesca, tell us a little bit more about Venezuelan food.
Ok, en Venezuela la gastronomía es demasiado grande. Demasiado. Pasa que en Venezuela, en tiempos atrás, llegaron muchos inmigrantes y hay una mezcla realmente de gastronomía. No es solamente los frijoles negros con el arroz y la carne. Es muy común ese plato en los latinos con diferentes nombres. En mi país es pabellón, en Cuba es ropa ropa vieja.
Ropa vieja, yeah.
Ropa vieja. Okay. Pero en Venezuela, como ya saben, es muy común lo que es la arepa. Si la han escuchado, es ya creo que a nivel mundial. La arepa es lo más popular. Hallaca, que es un plato navideño. También tenemos asado negro, que es una carne negra. Tenemos una gran variedad de dulces tradicionales hechos en casa. Es súper grande
Nice.
la gastronomía. Solo que lo más popular es lo que más se conoce, como te dije, la ropa vieja en Venezuela, pabellón, carne, plátanos, arroz y frijoles negros.
See, very similar to our food, the Haitian food, Caribbean food. You know, we definitely have the rice, and usually it's like dzigikole, as we call it. It's like the rice and beans.
Yeah.
We call it stuck rice. You know.
Yeah. Solo que es diferentes sabores.
Yeah.
Sí, en los frijoles negros no saben igual. En las regiones tienen una forma distinta de prepararlas. Unas son más condimentadas, otras son hechas más al natural. En mi país suelen usar para condimentar las comidas más natural, no con muchas especies, no son tan saladas, no son tan fuertes como otras que he probado. Pero sí, es bastante delicioso y amplia la gastronomía.
Nice. I live in the Raw, so I get to eat a lot of Venezuelan food. So I get to experience a lot of the things you're describing, and I all love it. I love it all. I love it all. Monty, tell us a little bit about your culture when it comes to food.
Well, back home we eat everything from, I guess you'd say, from head to tail is the way to put it. And then, like he was saying earlier, there's certain parts of the meat or the chicken, the cow, whatever it is that are reserved for like the lower people. And then usually what happens is the head of the household, so like the man of the house, will get certain parts of the cow, for example, will get the gizzard of the chicken. It's considered like a delicacy. So there's, I guess, like a hierarchical thing that goes on with food and how it's presented to certain people and who gets to eat what part. And another thing with just the food back home is that it used to be that food would be tied to an act or like an event or something like that, but that's been lost because before, traditionally, the reason why, like when you have a visitor coming to your house, you present them with like a full chicken because they're visiting and they have to eat like the whole chicken, or you present them with something like that. But now the way it works is people in the village, when someone from the city, for example, is visiting, they'll be expecting that person to bring them stuff, and they'll get excited like, oh, we're gonna eat well because this person is coming from the city. And so there's been like a disconnect in the translation over time or something like that, where people are now expecting the people from the city or from the diaspora, for example, to bring things back home and feed people, as opposed to where it originates from is that when a visitor would come in, everybody in the community would pitch in and put stuff together to present to the visitor, you know, to like welcome them and give them, just make them feel welcome, feel at home, like eat all this food. And the only reason why everybody would get to eat when a visitor came around is because there'd be so much that would be put in together from the whole community that there'll be so much left over that everybody could eat. It wasn't that the person coming in from outside would bring everything for people to eat. So that has been lost a little bit in translation, and I feel like it should go back to the way where the community all pitches in and, contributes to welcoming visitors and just sharing, the love and everything like that. And also, I think this happened maybe with colonialism, is that now we had a staple food of mealie meal, where we'd grind the mealie meal into a powder and then make almost like a cake, and that would be like our starch that would have with different vegetables and meats and different condiments like that, ground nuts and stuff like that. But now what's happening is, first of all, the mealie meal is highly processed and it's not healthy anymore. So there's an issue of malnutrition, at least in Zambia. I can speak for Zambia, because people are using that, nshima is what it's called, the thing that's made from maize meal. They're using that as like a main source of energy, as opposed to having a balanced diet. So they'll eat like a really big piece of nshima with a little piece of chicken, a little bit of relish, and that would be like their meal every day. And there's increase in the malnutrition because of that. So I think just going back to the natural way of producing things, because there's nothing wrong with nshima, it's just that right now it's highly processed, and that's people's main source of energy, and we've kind of gone away from our true sources of energy through food, that we kind of need to like figure out what that was before colonialism. So
it's also part of our growth as a people all together, and the conception also of like overpopulation and having to kind of like have those type of foods for us to basically fill ourselves as much as we can and get as much energy. In Haiti, we do that a lot also, a lot of rice, a lot of cornmeal, a lot of bread, all these things, even water with sugar, things that, you get in the morning to get energy from, so
we call
that's
that
interesting.
sigolo, the
Which
water
one?
with the sugar.
Yeah.
That's also a popular drink.
So there you go. Robert, tell us a little bit more about
You actually hit a good point. I mean, back in Native American culture, obviously we lived off the land. I mean, so a lot of people know about the traditional meals and the traditional foods that we utilize. And in Moorish culture, we pretty much eat from scripture. We eat from the Levitical laws. And if you go through Leviticus, it breaks down the types of food we're allowed to eat, or we're not allowed to eat, or we're preferring to eat. Like we can't eat shrimp, can't eat pork in Moorish culture. But you hit a real strong point. In America, in modern America, we really don't know what anything tastes like, truthfully, because there's so much processed food and chemicalized food that when you travel the world, and I encourage everybody from America who hasn't traveled to just go travel the world and taste the food and engulf yourself in the culture. But when people do travel, they say, oh man, it doesn't taste the same, or it doesn't taste right, or I don't like it. No, it's because your taste buds have been living off processed food for so long. You don't know what real food, we don't know what real food tastes like, and that's one of our issues. We think that, hamburgers and hot dogs and even certain fruits, bananas, how they look in the grocery store look nothing how they look in real life.
Like
Exactly.
Life,
Everything has been processed, and now we have the genetically modified organisms that they're genetically engineering the food. So a lot of the population haven't had a chance to engulf ourselves in the natural form of food. So we don't know how to contrast the difference. We think the food that we're eating is the real version of the food. And when you go eat the real thing, a lot of modern Americans think it's nasty.
Right.
So I mean, that's the biggest point for me, and I really encourage people to go just travel across the world and try as many different things as possible. And that's why one of my favorite shows was with Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace. That guy used to travel everywhere and just try all.
Isn't that like a dream job?
Yeah,
it's like the most perfect job ever.
And you could just see him getting down, man, and just see the difference in the way the food is cooked and the love and the way it was prepared. So, that's the main thing that I just want to emphasize in that point, is just try the real thing, opposed to shunning it, So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because that people Americans, at least, when they try the real food,
Right, right.
tend to hate it.
Right.
But it was the complete opposite experience for a cousin of mine who grew up in the UK in London, and the first time she traveled to Zambia, she tried the food and she was like, "This is so delicious. This tastes so good." Got to the point that when she went back to the UK, she asked her mom whenever she was traveling to Zambia to bring back onions. Just onions. She was like, the onions
right.
taste so much better. They're so tasteless in the
Yes.
UK, is what she said. So, yeah, you could either realize like this is how it's supposed to taste and be like, this is awesome.
Right,
I want more of
exactly.
this.
Like the
or-
chemicals, you're eating chemicals. Like
Yeah, it's so interesting because I used to, back in the day, I used to play music and used to travel a lot more than I travel now. So I used to go out and visit other countries and other cultures and other cities and stuff. And we had a very Americanized band member. And everywhere we would go, and I remember we went to France, and I was like, man, I want to experience the real French cuisine. And it was like, man, I want some McDonald's.
exactly.
I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he goes to McDonald's, and he's like, that's not McDonald's. Yeah, no, right? And it was like, that's not McDonald's. I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, man, come on, man. It's like, try something different. He's like, nah, he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to mess with any of that. He doesn't want the escargots or whatever, you know? So that was interesting. But for me, when I used to come here in Miami actually very often when I was growing up. My grandmother used to live here in Miami, so I used to come and visit her. And I remember our experience coming here every time we came out of the airport, and me and my brother was like Burger King.
Right.
It's like instinct.
Right,
it was like
right.
airport, drive through Burger King and go home, right?
Right.
I'm like, man, it's like, for me, it was like part of the entire experience. From Haiti, I was already expecting me to go there and experience Burger King, right?
Right.
And my grandmother's house actually was very close to a Burger King, so we would leave the house, walk, and go around the fence and go to Burger King every single day.
Wow.
You know, because we didn't have that in Haiti, and to me, it was the most wonderful thing ever. It was big Whopper, cheese, and like fries, and
Smell, you
Coke,
can
and the
smell it
smell, and all that kind of
smoking
stuff.
out there.
So it was.
Chase a smoothie.
Say it again.
Chase and a smoothie.
Yeah, exactly. Like
It's more calories.
yeah, it's like yeah.
It's not healthy for
Nothing is
it's
healthy.
not. It's not.
But what I realized also when, obviously when I got older and now living here in the past 15 years and being pretty much Americanized, it's like the drive-through, the fast food concept developed here in the States actually has such an impact on how society is evolving right now. And maybe the reverse, maybe society has such an impact on how we eat. Because now everything is fast-paced.
Microwave
You work until like 6 and then you have to get home in traffic for an hour. By the time you get home, you can't cook. So you have to go through a drive-through, you pay $10 and you get a bucket of chicken, you get pizza, and that's your dinner.
I'll say we find an excuse to eat out.
You find
But I think that we talk about obesity, all that stuff. I think it's not fast food or restaurant. I think it's us not cooking at home.
Right. Yeah. People aren't even sitting at the table with their families anymore.
It's
At all.
And
Growing up,
that's where.
Right.
Yeah,
You got
exactly. We have Uber Eats. We have, so
which
they
is even
do-
more convenient. So now you can stay, you don't even have to go out, and you have Uber Eats to eat out of all the restaurants. For me, eating out in a restaurant is an event. It's it's fun. It's an activity.
Right.
Yeah.
Americans really eating out is what they do. It's it's
Party
convenience
life.
is actually the
Well,
fact.
I believe that that's just the way they marketed it.
Right.
Exactly.
Whatever you do, put the right marketing behind it.
Right.
All gonna,
Also right.
Exactly. That's
We're all
true.
gonna go with a trend.
Right.
But if we really want to, like for example, I'm a chef, right?
Right.
We'd be like, what do you eat at home? I'll be like Subway.
I mean, it's true. Actually, not really. I've read that
just
Subway
Publix.
is more processed. No, but I've heard that Subway is actually more processed than a lot of those other foods. Even like the veggies with everything that's put on there, so they can stay in that little thing for the entire day.
It's about the money, and you know what's kind of scary? The processing and the modern Americanization of the world. You can go to Dubai or China. I mean, there's KFC and McDonald's there now when it wasn't there 10, 15 years ago. You know, and now it's starting to spread out. So I think back to the culture. The culture is the sustaining power. I mean, it's what is our root to our natural selves, and when we lose our culture, we lose our way, and it's starting to happen in different populations.
I would say I think education has a lot to do, where we spend so much time in school learning about chemistry,
Right.
biology, when we're not being taught of the fundamentals.
Right.
It should be mandatory to learn how to cook.
Yes.
Because that's just how we survive on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly.
It should be mandatory to teach us about nutrition.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It should be
No, you're right.
It
mandatory
used
because
to be mandatory
because
Right.
in Zambia.
you realize that the healthiest people are those that cook at
Yeah.
home.
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
And
Right.
in Japan, nutrition.
You know?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
but
great, yeah.
Nutrition is very important, and I've noticed like traveling back and forth from America to Japan, the portions.
Oh
are-
yeah. Oh yeah.
the portions,
Oh, yeah.
you gotta eat.
Great.
Also, you gotta eat in moderation. And being a chef, I hear a lot of gluten free.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Gluten-free.
I'm organic.
how it's like everyone has a gluten free. I mean, some really do have.
Right,
You
right.
have to take it extremely serious. But when I sweat and cook something that's gluten free for someone to take it extremely serious, and I hear they're really not gluten free. They just don't want
Just
to eat
wanna go
gluten
with
free.
it. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you just being
The
mean.
trend. Right.
Yeah,
But it's a trend. But think about it. Italian, what do they do every day?
Pasta.
Right.
Yeah,
What is
but-
different?
French, what do they do every day?
Facts.
Asian, they eat their rice every single
Right.
day. I eat my rice every day. I mean, I'm Haitian. If you give me a meal without rice, I'd be like, yo, what's the rice?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
care if you have lobster.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the rice.
That's so
the rice is
funny.
really.
Right.
I'm not looking for dessert. I'm looking for the
Right,
rice
right.
to wrap up. But
Yeah.
it's eating in moderation. It's,
That's-
it's
That's
how we
key.
eat.
That's key.
And then if you cook at home, you can control. See here's olive oil is super healthy,
Right.
right?
Yeah, everything.
If you use vegetable oil, you say olive oil is healthier than vegetable oil.
Right.
But why is olive oil healthier than vegetable oil? Because olive oil promotes the good cholesterol,
Right.
right?
Right. The good fat.
But olive oil and vegetable oils carry the same amount of calories.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
This is for real.
Yeah.
But
So,
I think,
so you mean that means even with olive oil, you have to control how much olive oil you put in your
Moderation
food.
is key.
Moderation
For
is key
everything.
because if you
For
don't know,
everything.
Right.
you're gonna keep carrying
Yeah.
weight and be like, "Where's that weight coming? Well, your olive oil. You're eating too much olive oil because it carries the same amount of calories."
Right.
It's interesting what you said about like culture and how it's spreading to the rest of the world, where KFCs and McDonald's and other such fast foods are developing.
Right.
But also just the lifestyle in America kind of forces people, like you said, you work up to 6, you have an hour to drive home till 7, forces people to live that life. But if you go to like Europe or even in Africa, where we get like 3 vacation days a month,
Right.
as opposed
Yeah.
to like
Yeah,
10
I mean,
a year
yeah,
and stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
Moderation. But when
It's-
I was
yeah.
in,
Right.
in Europe, like for example, I wanted to try French food, everything, and then I went to Monaco, and I couldn't believe my eyes. The drive-through of McDonald's was the first time I'd seen it in my life. There was Lamborghini, Ferraris. I'm like, McDonald's has all those. I'm like, I bet. Then I tried. I actually went to McDonald's. I'm like, I need to try it. And it was the best burger of McDonald's I've ever had. It was good.
Right.
It tastes awesome.
Yeah.
I will go back again and buy again. So, why is the McDonald's over there? It's better, more flavorful, tastes healthier
Right.
than here.
Chemicals, process,
Yeah.
the chemicals,
So-
the
Even just
process.
the number of
The
chemicals,
ingredients.
The ingredients.
Yeah, the chemicals that are allowed, for
tomatoes
example.
over there and
Yeah.
tomatoes here.
They,
Oh,
but,
completely different.
yeah,
All
the
different.
governments, there's different governments that sanction and
Even-
allow these things, you know.
Yeah.
So
Even just to get our food, even clothing, there's 1,000 chemicals that are not allowed in European
Facts.
clothing that are allowed here.
Oh yeah, a
So
lot.
yeah, there's a lot of things that you're actually putting on your
And
skin.
I've always had this question: why is organic food
yeah.
so expensive? I mean,
yeah.
You're right.
Well, you're mentioning organic food, and this is something
it's
that
the marketing behind it. that
no, but
makes
here's a big culture difference. In a lot of European countries, you see the food is labeled as non-organic, right? Because most of it is.
Organic.
So the non-organic is the ones that are shown to you. So basically, beware, this is not organic. Here, they're promoting organic. So
Yeah,
everything
like-
else is not good,
Right.
but this is organic. That's why you should pay a premium for it.
Right.
And organic also comes in quotation marks.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
definition
Yeah.
of organic
Yeah,
is not.
It's
They'll-
American.
There are
they'll
loopholes.
define-
There are loopholes all around
Real
it, you know.
definition of organic. I think I read somewhere where, in an article where we can tell which one is organic. You got two apples, one is organic, one is not.
Right.
There's no way you can tell.
Right.
But if they touch each other, then that one that was organic is non-organic anymore.
Isn't that what?
It's
It's
not
not
organic.
It's due to the genetic
But the USA
modification.
has a
So because
The skin.
The USA has a
the
what?
sticker, yeah.
The skin?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the organic product.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
You have
the
a
USA has
Correct.
chicken and raw chicken you touch.
A sticker?
Right.
A sticker.
And a
Yeah,
sticker,
chicken is
and a
no
sticker
longer-
for
The sticker.
the certificate.
Yeah, that you get, and they have the color coding, and we even have seedless fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have
yeah.
fruit
How
with
do
no
you-
seeds? Like, where's the seeds?
Yeah.
I mean, you literally cannot find seeded fruit in a lot of our grocery stores. You can't find it. Like,
Dr. Sebi.
yeah, Dr.
Oh,
Sebi,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Rest in
I love
peace.
to, really love to listen to him, and I'll also do my research
Yes.
after him. But it's really when you like.
It's crazy.
All right, guys. So we could be talking about food the entire
All day,
show,
all
right?
day, all day.
Maybe we should have addressed that later in the show.
They'll chop it. They'll edit it out.